Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Real Talk Youth Ministry with Josh and Kaleb. We're glad that you're hanging out with us again, whether you're in your car, at lunch break, or just hiding in the office trying to take a breath for a second. We've got another great episode lined up for you today, and I'm Josh, and today we're going to dive into something I think we desperately need to talk about more, and that's Deacons in action serving beyond the title.
And I'm Kaleb, but Josh, before we get too far into this, we need to address the elephant in the room. We're in a different room. We're together.
We are together.
For the first time in this podcast, we are together.
We are, and it's kind of weird because we're very close together, and I don't think I like it.
Well, sorry. Anywho, I'm excited about this one too because if we are honest, sometimes we treat church roles like it's a name tag instead of like a mission field, instead of a way to serve. The title of deacon gets tossed around like it's a formality, but we're here to say that it's so much more than that, especially when it comes to youth ministry. Deacons can play a huge role if we give them space to serve, move, and lead. Sorry, my eyes were, I don't know what that was.
That's all right. It's all right.
I don't know what that was.
Do you need your glasses this morning?
Yes, I do.
Well, do you have them?
No.
Oh, okay, then that's going to be a problem. All right, and to help us through all of this today, we've invited two guys that aren't just wearing the title, they're living it out. Our guests today are Professor or Dr. Matthew Barker.
Matty Ice.
And then the one, the legend, the only, Sweeney Dog, or a.k.a. David Sweeney. Two brothers in Christ, both deacons at the Henderson Church of Christ, both actively serving with heart and purpose. Matt and David, or a.k.a. Sweeney. That's what we're going to refer to him this entire episode as Sweeney. We are both glad to have you.
Yeah. Really good to be here. I'm excited. I was hoping that I would get to be on y'all's podcast, and it is here. I'm excited about it.
You are here, and we are ready. So before we get too deep into it, Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself, what role you're in currently with the Henderson Church of Christ, a little about how you got connected to youth ministry, then tell us how you got the nickname Matty Ice.
Matty Ice, nice. Well, it's good to be on here again. So I started working as a deacon with Henderson Church in 2019, right around COVID. And before I worked with the youth, I was working with what we call the tweens ministry, and that is pretty much the preteens, so anywhere from 3rd to 6th grade. And at the time, my kids were in that age bracket, so I helped a lot with the programs with that. And as my kids aged out of that, started working more with the youth when my son Riley got in the youth group. And soon my daughter Holland will be in the youth group as well. So I started working with that when my kids were involved in the programs with that, and really enjoyed it, getting to work with the youth. It's been a great experience so far.
Very cool.
Matty Ice.
And Matty Ice, the nickname, is a self-proclaimed nickname. So it's just one that I was like, my wife calls me Matty, and I'm like, Matty Ice sounds really cool. Matt Ryan for the Atlanta Falcons is Matty Ice. And I was like, man, the dude's cool. I want to have a cool nickname. So I gave myself the nickname, and it hasn't quite caught on, but it's getting there. We're getting there.
I mean, I call you Matty Ice. Every time I see you, I call you Matty Ice.
Yeah.
All right. Over to you, Sweeney. Talk about your role in the congregation, what you do at church, your connection to youth ministry, and maybe if you have, and how you got the nickname Sweeney Dog.
All right. So we moved here in 1990, and I started helping soon thereafter, just chaperone, just kind of helping out the youth minister at the time. We went from that to, after Janet and I got married, we helped with Lads to Leaders. We did a Bible Bowl team one year that nobody really wanted to work with. And so we took them.
Isn't that all of us?
And we actually came away with a plaque. We felt pretty good about that. And that kind of just went from there to helping more with the youth group and helping different youth ministers. And that led to ultimately being asked to be a deacon. So I've worked with the youth group in Henderson on and off for 30 plus years. So it's been a while.
Yeah.
Sweeney's a pro, man. He knows what he's doing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Sweeney. You've also been, you've had to fill in as youth minister, correct?
Yes, I've done the interim youth minister role more than once over the years till we found a more permanent solution. So we've had a lot of opportunities to serve with the youth group here.
Very cool.
the Swing Dog nickname comes from my nephew was in the youth group, and his age group, Michael Bolton, Monty, Jesse, some of that bunch, they just started calling me Swing Dog, and it just stuck. Unfortunately for my son, that led for them to call him Swing Pup. I don't know if he enjoyed that as much as the Swing Dog part, but
Then
I've been called many things over the years.
then Trenton got called Swing Kitty, and then it turned into T-Rod.
Your dad didn't like that, so he called him T-Rod.
T-Rod.
Yeah. There's probably a lot of nicknames that have been given over the years that we cannot even say on this podcast too, right? So
Yes.
You know.
that's
Or
very
that
correct.
none
That
of us
happens.
know.
yeah.
Well, it's
Lots
not
of
that we don't know. It's probably that you don't know.
Oh, there's probably
You're
that
the
too.
newest, yeah. All right, over to you, Matt. So you talked about a little bit about how you went from tweens to youth. Tell us how that transition looked.
It was a little interesting because I still have one child that is in the tweens and then one that is in the youth group. So it's been a little bit of an adjustment trying to get everybody where they need to be, trying to dedicate as much time to both of those as I can. The transition, just like you probably have talked on this podcast before, it's not always like a seamless transition where stuff wasn't always communicated exactly how it needed to be. This is when you're going to start working with youth. This is when you're going to stop working with tweens. So a little bit of that was a little bit confusing as far as how that transition was going to go. But then once I fully got into the youth group, it made it a lot better. So it's made it a lot easier since I've been working just with the youth now.
And you started that transition similar to when I was coming on.
I think so. Yeah. So
New
around
blood.
2022, 2023, I think somewhere around there is when we started making that transition. And part of that is too, you have other families that start coming up that are taking control of some of those things, that have kids coming up in that age group. So figuring out kind of when you can kind of move out of that and when those other families will kind of take over some of that is just making sure everything's taken care of before you are fully out of that. And you got to kind of figure it out as you go. And sometimes that's just how it is with youth group stuff too. Like there's an event you're planning that you've never done before, and you got to figure out what's going to work, what's not going to work. So a little bit of the first couple years of that transition was figuring out how to do things in the best way. And so you kind of learn by experience in that way.
All right, so let's kick things off real quick. Now that we've got to know each other, and obviously we all knew each other, but now that they've got to know you, when people hear the word deacon, I think maybe their first thoughts are usually, well, it's maintenance. They're usually fixing stuff. They're opening the building. Maybe they're managing a budget in some way. And yes, that stuff matters. But when you look at scripture, especially in Acts chapter 6, it paints a picture of service that is much deeper than all the stuff that we've talked about. Deacons were chosen to handle ministry needs so the apostles could stay focused on the word and prayer. So that's not busy work. That's leadership by service right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what stands out to me is that the apostles were intentional on who they picked, and they had to be full of the Spirit and of wisdom. That tells me that this isn't just a who's available list, right? It's not just anybody and everybody, but more of who is already serving and trustworthy. I think churches today can learn a lot from that, just based on what is mentioned in Acts.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things I would add to that is being a deacon or any sort of role that you're playing in the church, it should be focused on others. And so when you hear like a deacon, you might think, oh, you're in charge of this certain thing, right? But it's really not about you as a person. It's about who you're serving. And it should be others focused, not just on you. So when you think about, well, what role am I going to play as a deacon? It shouldn't be what can I do to kind of promote myself. It should be how can I serve those that I'm working with. So if it's youth, if it's tweens, or whatever area of the church that you're serving in, it should be others focused. And the other part of that is it needs to be someone that's proven, like you mentioned, Kaleb. It needs to be someone that has already shown they can perform the duties of that particular role. And so it's more of just we're going to put you in charge, helping with this area because you've already shown us that you can do that. It doesn't just need to be a blind, like, hey, we're going to throw you in here. Hopefully you'll do well. It needs to be someone that has already been working as faithful and does the work that they need to do in the right way, works well with other people is another big part of that, and that they've already proven they can do that. It doesn't just need to be a blind leap of faith, for sure.
I agree with that. And as just thinking about this question, deacons that are successful are ones that are already plugged into a program. It's not someone that they just said, all right, we need to make this person a deacon, so where do we put them? you know, being chosen to me is a recognition of the service that you've already provided.
Yeah.
And especially with the youth group, you can't just pick somebody
Right.
and
That's
say,
right.
here, and stick them in the middle of the youth group, because kids are different. Youth group is different, and it takes unique personalities, and everybody can't come in that room and just pick up immediately, kind of what's going on. You have to invest the time in the kids for them to trust you, for them to kind of see the service that you want to provide. And so prior experience in a program to me is huge when it comes to serving as a deacon.
I really appreciate what both y'all said. It's more than just a title. There's a lot more into being a deacon over youth than what the word deacon just means. Like you said, filling in for a youth group. Sometimes you have to do that. Your youth minister leaves and you have to fill in, and you have to actually be the big dog, I guess you would say. It's really living the life that they're already leading that leads to the title. So the work should already be happening before the recognition ever starts being given.
Yeah.
Right?
And Philippians 2:3 comes to my mind as well when we think about not doing anything out of selfish ambition. That's when I was talking about, not doing things to promote yourself. If you're focused on who you're serving, then that makes a lot of the things fall into place a little bit better. If you're just focused on how can I have this great lesson so everybody's going to think I'm, great at teaching or whatever it is, then your motivation really isn't where it needs to be. If you're focused on how can we help these kids, these youth group members, tweens, whatever group you're working with, then they're gonna do a lot be more effective in your ministry if you're focused on others. And selfish ambition is more this idea, I'm just looking out for myself. I want to try to do everything so people see me, which is not good in any area of life, let alone youth ministry like Sweeney was talking about. These kids can pick up on that pretty easily if they know that you're just out there to do things for yourself. They'll call you out on it sometimes too. I mean,
Yes,
you got to
they
make
will.
sure you're being real and truthful with them as well.
Yes, they will. I want to go ahead and say this to any youth ministers listening. You have to connect with your deacons, right? That is so important. And I think sometimes youth ministers get this idea that it's a one-man band show, and that is, youth ministry is not that, or it shouldn't be, right? And it's not just for logistics or to sign off on budgets, but it's actual partners in ministry. Right. One of the things that I think what I appreciate about how we do things together at Henderson is y'all help teach. And, for me as a youth minister, that is awesome. And for y'all as a youth deacon, that is awesome for the kids to get to hear you. And y'all get to be a support system when we as youth ministers are running on fumes, when we're planning events, or when you need someone in the room to help carry the load, And so I'm interested, how has being a youth deacon at Henderson, how have you seen that role fulfilled in these ways?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me is just the variety of different things you get to do. I know you mentioned teaching. Teaching's one area that we're able to help on Wednesday nights. Just the planning. I'm a big planner. I love planning things. So being able to help kind of in the planning process. I know sometimes, Kaleb, you will ask me to help you get food for a retreat and see stuff like that. I love doing that. I love planning stuff. So being able to kind of be involved in the process early on with the mission trip we have coming up this summer, for example, getting to kind of chime in on different things of what we think might work well, what doesn't work well, is very beneficial because you get different perspectives in that way. So it's not just one person planning it. You have the deacons kind of giving their input on it, what things are going to work from their experience that they've seen work well with mission trips. So just the whole overall planning process for me is always enjoyable, to be able to help with different areas of the ministry. From start to finish. Sometimes we see the finished product and people don't always realize how much work goes into that, like a retreat, for example, lining up speakers, getting food, all of those things is something that I enjoy doing. So it's something that I never mind helping with. And I'm always trying to at least say, hey, is there anything you need? Just because I enjoy doing that. So sometimes there's different talents that everybody has. Some people might not be as big on planning things. but then there's others that are. So just finding what area you can help in, I think, is big. For me anyway, it's just the variety of different things you get to do and help out with and interact with the kids.
Well, and speaking to your point, Caleb, how many times are we on a trip somewhere and the bus breaks down?
Yeah.
Or we have someone who is sick and we have to take them, we have like a medical deal and we have to take somebody off, and you've got to split the kids up. You remember that trip to Western Kentucky when the buses all broke down on the way back and we got back at different times?
Oh yeah.
And so you have to have people. You can't the youth minister can't bear that load by himself. And you got to have people who can and are willing to and have invested in the kids enough that the kids trust them, and the parents trust them, that they can take care of those kids and get them where they need to be. And the youth ministers need help, need help with that. Also, kids are different, and sometimes youth ministers need help just reaching and dealing with certain kids because personalities are different. And some people may gravitate towards one personality over another. And the number of adults you can have that have like a variety of personalities and styles that can reach your youth groups, because youth groups are never the same. Every year,
That's right.
you will have a new group with a completely different makeup. And, it's always good to have people to, especially if there's that one or two that just really push your buttons. It's always nice to have somebody to say, can you help me with this?
Yeah.
Because I've got to take care of all of the kids, but I've got one that's really pushing my buttons today. Can you help me with that?
Yeah.
Especially when you're out of town and you're on trips and stuff. So, there's so many things that deacons can do that kind of help lift that load a little bit, that is more than just I put out the tables and I put out the chairs and I clean up and I do other things.
I really enjoy hearing both of y'all's points on that. And, it's kind of relieving as a youth minister to hear that you enjoy, being active with youth group. You don't have a problem with teaching. You don't have a problem with if a bus breaks down, you kind of have to handle that situation while the youth minister handles a different situation. Right now we're in the middle of lads planning, and my deacons, where I'm at, are really hands-on when it comes to lads leaders. They see that I'm stressed out with lads and they say, hey, how can I help? That's really what I enjoy about deacons the most, is they're not scared to jump in and help, especially when they see that someone is struggling. Youth ministry is a high energy thing. And deacons, I guess you would say in a way that they help manage burnout with the youth ministers. Youth ministry, like Caleb said, is not a one-man thing. I mean, we have multiple people that are doing, and that's what the deacons are doing. So when deacons just show up, not to just supervise, but to serve, and teach and go on retreats and, all that good, amazing stuff, it communicates to those teens that they matter to the church as a whole. To know, as a teen, when I grew up in the Henderson youth group, seeing Sweeney on a trip, seeing Scott Rogers, Dad, Jared, Tim Anderson, all people like those, seeing all these guys around me that cared about me made me want to connect with them even more.
And let's just be real here. Any moment can be a high impact moment for a teenager.
Yes.
For the average church attendee too, right? It can happen during the sermon. It can happen during small conversations, road trips. Let's just be real. Sometimes the conversations on the church van, that could be a podcast in and of itself, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Church van conversations. And
I don't know about you, but we have
that's an interesting title right there, Josh.
that would be we have Disney karaoke
We'll start that
on
one.
our bus.
Yeah, let's start that one.
all my kids are under the age of 16, and the majority of them are girls, and they do Disney karaoke.
Nice. And you love every minute of that, don't you?
So would you, Caleb. Don't lie.
I do the same thing.
I'm kind of used to it because when I drove the bus for the Henderson youth group, I had the girls bus the entire time because Caleb took all the guys. So I'm kind of used to it.
Okay. And now there's a culture, and I'm trying to fix it. and
They're split. The guys and girls are always split up. They never are together. It's crazy.
And it I'm trying to fix it.
We have one
'Cause
bus, so
it's-
they forced to sit together.
They don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So and Deacons, y'all have the ability and a huge opportunity to build those relationships with those teenagers.
Yeah.
So do y'all have a scenario or a time when something like that really stuck out with you and has really impacted the way that you serve?
Yeah. I mean, I think just in general, there's a lot of things that these kids are going through we have no idea about until we have a time where we can talk with them. Like, say, for example, at a weekend retreat when they're away from everything. Sometimes these retreats and different youth events, these are a time for them to get away from the things that are going on in their life. We might not know nothing about until they open up to us at an event where we're away from kind of the everyday life. I have one example that comes to my mind from this past retreat. I won't mention any names, but there's one member of our youth group that her grandmother's very sick and probably not going to be with us much longer. And I think for her, that was a good weekend to get away because her mom's been really upset about it. Her whole family she's very close to her grandmother, and just being able to play games, play cards, kind of just talk with everyone, kind of have more of a normal weekend and not think about that, I think was good for her. And it wasn't anything where we had to say, hey, tell me how you're feeling. Tell me all your thoughts about what's going on in your life. But being able to have a different atmosphere, I guess, to really be able to kind of maybe feel more open to sharing that with whether it's her friends that are girls or whoever. I think that's big because, we say a lot of times when we go to church camp or whatever, all these places we go to, you're getting away from the normal life. And that kind of makes you maybe a little bit more vulnerable to be able to think about things differently than maybe just the busyness of your everyday life. So I think just in general, just the trips, the weekend trips, mission trips, whatever it is, you get to see a different side of a lot of these kids, and you don't always know what they're going through until they're able to open up to you in those different environments.
I think the few that I think of, when we first built the activity center,
I wasn't even alive.
We, just bonding over basketball, just bonding over spending time together, doing something that we enjoyed back then. I was not as old as I am now.
Knees are not as good now.
I could play a little better than I do now, but that era was interesting because we actually converted people because they could actually come play basketball with us. And that was the basis of it, was spending time together doing something you enjoy. When you do that, you get to know people. Retreats, bus rides. When we went to golf a few years ago, Janet couldn't go, so I was there by myself, and it was Miles and Tucker and Andrew and Ryan Cosby, and I just hung out with them the whole time.
It's a very interesting group in itself.
Built a strong bond with those four just because we hung out together, and they hung out with the old guy for the weekend. I think some people think working with the youth is harder than it really is. Find a common ground, find something they like. I can't count the number of youth group members that either video games or music or movies or TV shows or things that you have in common that start a conversation that leads you down a path to build a relationship with someone that becomes important to them. And then it becomes an adult in their life that they understand genuinely cares about them. And it's simply just talking about things you already like talking about. I think that's one of the great fears in many in the church are they see those kids sitting down there by them all together and they're like, they don't want to talk to me. They don't want to have anything to do with me. That's not true. That's far from the truth, especially if you find something that connects you. And if you start that conversation, you can build a relationship with a kid that then transcends, kind of that I'm older, you're younger. No, we share this common interest, and then we kind of have a relationship together, and we build a life around, being in each other's lives. And I think that's one of the roles the deacon plays there, is building that relationship and finding those opportunities. There's no magic to it. It's simply just spending that time.
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, having a variety of people that are helping with the youth helps with that, because just if we're honest, there's certain ones that we relate to more than others in the youth group. I mean, there's certain ones that we have the same interests as, and so there's some that we're going to automatically just relate to more than others, just like Sweeney might relate to some more than others that I don't, or whatever. So to have a variety of people that are on the trip, both male and female, I mean, I think that's important to point out too, having ones that can relate to some of the things that these young girls are going through, these young guys, being able to kind of be there for them, and maybe just talking about, like Sweeney said, just talking about things going on in their life, things that they're interested in. If you're interested in those same things, it's going to make it a lot easier. So having a variety of people that go on these trips that can relate to a lot of these different kids, so they have someone that they kind of feel is in their corner. I think that's huge.
And I think that goes back to your talking about doing nothing from selfish ambition. If you invest in a kid, if you invest in a member of the youth group, and you show them and give them, and they talk to you, you hear what they say, and you respond and letting them know that you understand and that you are connecting, they will receive you. And I think that's.
And again, they can tell if you're being real about it too. They know if you're just doing it just to be nice, or if you're generally have that concern for them.
And there's no price you can put on building that relationship and how that makes you feel.
That's right.
Sometimes I think that we put an emphasis on who's leading, right? It doesn't matter who's preaching. It doesn't matter who's teaching. It doesn't matter who's the leader on a trip. I think sometimes we forget that in ministry, ministry happens on the margins. Like you said, you brought people to the church after y'all built the gym, and a lot of people started coming to the church. Those little things is ministry in itself. I think some of the most Christ-like services don't involve a microphone, right? We don't have to be in front of the people to connect to them. Maybe it's playing basketball with them. Maybe it's, like we said, riding on the bus home. Those are some very interesting talks in itself. Maybe it's, y'all do a prayer breakfast at Jack's on every Tuesday. Some of those are the smallest things that can happen in ministry. And that's what it means to really be in action. And that's what it really looks like. And it's those small things that make the biggest difference.
Let's just be real here. Those prayer breakfasts are the worst thing to get up to, and it's the hardest thing to get up for. I mean, it is so hard.
I don't know. I do enjoy breakfast.
Listen,
I
am the world. I'm going to tell on myself right here. So for y'all listening, you're getting a real talk from Kaleb right now. I don't go often, and that's terrible. Like, it is so
Aren't you
hard.
the youth minister?
But
I'm one of them, yes.
Jared's always there, so there's
Yeah,
always someone there. But if you make it a Chick-fil-A prayer breakfast, maybe you'll get a few more that comes, because that's like the Lord's
If
chicken,
they're not
right?
closed for training.
That's true. This is real talk now. We're getting real. That's true. They are closed a lot.
Throwing a little bit of shade towards Chick-fil-A.
I'm salty about that.
And here's the thing. Young people are watching, right? They watch everything. And it's not people watch. It's not just young people who watch, but people watch in general. They will notice who checks in on them, who's consistent, who's serving even when no one else is watching, who is helping try to mold them. Deacons who model that kind of heart can shape an entire generation of people for service and for the glory of God. And that's important.
I'm going to tag on to that just a little bit. A youth minister in our groups in particular, I have up to almost 20, and you have what, 30, 40?
I don't know. It depends on the day.
But you have a good number. Sometimes we're not able to connect to all those kids. And we talked about that last episode, that sometimes that you have to have multiple people connecting. We only get them for 6 years. They start in 6th grade to 12th grade.
Oh, in Henderson, they start at 7th.
Oh, so we start 6th grade. And so sometimes it's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse. But
it's a pretty wide gap.
Yeah,
it really is.
Especially when your youth minister asks you to talk about marriage one Wednesday night.
That's a whole other podcast topic, generational things. That'd be a good topic.
Trying to talk about marriage. 7th graders still think they have cooties.
He's not lying.
He's not.
He's speaking the truth.
But to go back to what I was saying, though, that wide margin, sometimes you're able to connect to more of them than you can others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where your deacons come into help. They're able to connect with everybody. If your youth ministers are trying to help a particular bunch, we talked about in the last episode, it doesn't matter if there's 100 people in a room, if there's 10 people, we want to make sure we're trying to connect them all. Sometimes the youth minister cannot reach them all, and that's where our deacons come in to help.
Yeah.
Have y'all thought any about what it looks like to lead by example? How you've noticed youth authenticity. There we go. And consistency as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to what we talked about in Philippians 2:3. You have this unselfish concern for others. And one of the things interesting in Philippians 2 verse 3, it says, not before it says selfishness, it says genuine, right? Genuine, selfish, unselfish concern for others. So being genuine means that you're not necessarily coming across like you're perfect and you do everything exactly right. So I think as far as leading by example, sometimes we think, well, if we're the youth minister or we're a deacon, we need to appear that we just know everything and we're perfect. And sometimes that can come across as very fake. And if we kind of catch ourselves doing that, it's something that we all kind of have to be aware of. We don't want to necessarily come across to the youth that we are, I struggle with everything that you're struggling with and all that. There's kind of a line there, but we also don't need to come across like we're judging them in any way as well, because we're there to help them. We're not there to judge them. We're there to encourage them. I think is the key distinction there that we have to make. And having a genuine concern for others. We're not looking out for ourselves. We're genuine. We're not coming across as perfect. Again, one of the things, Josh, you mentioned with having this connection maybe to certain age groups over others, one of the things that really helped me working with the tweens is when I moved up to the youth, I had already worked with a lot of those tweens going into that. So I had a little bit of a connection and kind of planning programs for them already. So that was something Jared and I talked a lot about. It's like, hey, maybe I can help a little bit with this younger ones because they're still kind of learning what's going on, and maybe helping a little bit with getting them acclimated to youth group life. It's a lot different coming from 6th grade to making that big jump to 7th grade. And all of a sudden you're in the youth group now. Right. And so that's a big part, finding people that maybe already have connected with some of those, that really helps. And just making sure you're not coming across that you're, better than other people. That's true for any ministry, not just youth ministry, but especially with youth ministry. They pick up on that really quick. If they think you're coming across that you're better than other people, you want to make sure that you're there for them and doing everything that you can. One example that comes to my mind, and this is something that all of you all know Riley. So Riley's kind of a interesting personality all in itself, and love him. But he'll ask me sometimes things like, hey, this is kind of what's going on. Did you ever struggle with this? And I think what he's getting at is this something that's normal for me to struggle with, right? People that are teenagers, they don't know always, like, is this normal for a teenager to go through? And for you to be able to say, hey, when I was a teenager, I dealt with that exact same thing. That makes them feel so much better that it wasn't like I'm saying, no, I've never dealt with that. Well, you're terrible for feeling that way, right? It's, yes, this is something that all teenagers deal with. I dealt with that when I was a teenager. And by hearing that, that's coming across, not that I'm better than you. You have that genuine concern for them. Yes, this is something I struggled with. And then it makes them feel a lot better. Not that they're okay to do it, but it's like, this is something normal that all teenagers struggle with. And it's something I'm really going to have to work hard to overcome. Right. So having that, like, where you're not necessarily saying I'm terrible, just like all of you all are, but saying, these are things that people struggle with. It's normal to struggle with these things. The devil is actively out against all of us at all times. And we have to be aware of that, but also letting them know that we're there for them. We're there to encourage them and help them in any way that we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think with our youth group, especially with our Friends Days and all that we do, we have so many mission opportunities, so many kids coming through. And I think it's important for young people to see adults who care and who are consistently there.
Yeah.
Who are just present. Not all kids have a mom and a dad at home.
Mm-hmm.
Not all kids have what we would want for them to have. And so as deacons, we can have that consistent presence, because to take this a step further, as far as kind of responsibility of a deacon, youth ministers, this is your job. This is what you do. And so, like anything, like any job, there's going to be opportunities to go somewhere else, to do something else, to try something different. And so there's going to be change. But with deacons, there's more of a consistency, more of a consistent face presence in their life that is there.
Yeah.
And for some kids, it hurts to see people struggle, and it hurts to see kids struggle. But it's nice to be able to be that consistent presence in their life. And they know every Wednesday, every Sunday, they're going to see us. And we're not going to come pester them. How are you today? Kind of situation. Tell me what's going on. It's going to be more like, we're here. If you need us, we're here. And how many times have we said that at a Bible class? If you need any one of us, and we say all our names, and we say, feel free to reach out. We're all here and we're all available. And I just think you can never underestimate the importance of that consistent presence in their life.
Yeah. So I want to shift a little bit here. And Matt, for someone who, who's not a deacon, maybe wants to become a deacon and wants to be more involved with a youth group, but maybe doesn't know how or where to start, what advice would you give them?
There's a lot that we could say there. A few things that come to my mind. I'm a big communication guy. I teach communication classes. I think communication is huge in anything, but definitely in youth ministry. People that want to serve in a certain role, being open about telling people they want to help out in that area, right? We can't assume that people are going to know that we want to serve in a certain way. And sometimes, like Sweeney talked about before, a lot of times the people that serve as deacons have already helped in some way before. But in order to do that, you have to openly express, hey, I want to help in this area, and find ways to connect with those that are, youth ministers, those that are in charge of different areas, to let them know that you want to help, right? So being open about communicating that is important. We can't assume that people are going to know we want to help with something if we don't vocally, openly express that to them. So I think communication is key. Another thing we've already touched on a little bit is just being available, right? So being available for different things going on with whatever event is going on. Hey, I'm here to help you if you need help getting the food for this event. I'm here to help you if you need any help with planning. Just being available and present, like Sweeney talked about, you need to be that. And then the other one is just be supportive of those in charge. We're here to help not only the youth group and whoever we're working with, but we're here to help those that are the youth ministers as well. We're supposed to be a support system for them. We should never be somebody that is making things difficult on those that are trying to do their best to plan things for our youth. And so not being a person that's full of confrontation, that's not someone that would make a good deacon, because if you're constantly bickering with people, then nothing's going to get accomplished. So I think having the right mindset going in is big in that. So someone that's aspiring to be a deacon, trying to be someone that works well with others in small groups, is definitely something that you have to do well, because not everything's going to go exactly how you would think it needs to be done, right? Everybody's going to have different opinions on how things should be done. How can you compromise to make sure that things are getting done? And again, looking out for those that we're serving, not necessarily what I would want to do. So kind of having that open mindset to work well with others, I think, is probably that, and communication, two of the biggest things for me.
If you have to be in charge, maybe the deacon is not the best role, because we're not in charge. We're here to serve. We're here to do what the youth ministers ask us to do. So to me, that's one of the willingness to accept direction and I need this from you, or I need that from you. To get involved, to me, though, it starts with being willing to engage with the kids. Start engaging with our young people. Show up, help. Be a presence in their life. Host a Devo. Tell the youth minister, hey, I want to have a Devo at my house. Start having the kids around you, and you can start putting in time, putting in effort, and they will see that, and they will gravitate to you, and they will want you to be part of their life. Genuineness, to me, is important. Kids know, and they'll pick it apart.
Yeah.
They know who genuinely cares and who's genuinely invested in them. And so it's not about you, it's about them. And if
Yeah.
you make it about them and you genuinely invest in them, they'll want to be around you. And, everything else flows from that. Everything will come from that.
Yeah. As we start to wrap up, what's one encouragement? And I'm going to throw an audible here. What is one encouragement that you would give to other deacons, youth ministers, or parents who are struggling?
Struggling.
Who are who are kind of in this low valley, who are, trying to make it through it.
You
Yeah.
trying to make me cry? I'm just
Like, what would be some pieces of encouragement?
I think at any given time, there's going to be people that experience that, like youth ministers, deacons, because there's different things going on in everybody's lives where they have certain things that get them down, right? It could be something that happened on a youth trip where you feel like maybe you didn't handle something the best way, or whoever it is. So when you're in these times where you're struggling, I think you have to look at, how can I serve, but how can I use my talents to serve? So when we think about the talents that I have, they might be different than what Sweeney has, right? And you all have different talents than all of us. So when we think about maybe we're not doing things the best way and we get kind of down about it, how can we use the talents that we have to help others? The things that I might be good at, others might not be able to do. So finding what areas that you can serve and feel like you're useful in that ministry. Because I think a lot of times the reason we feel down about things is because we don't feel like we're being used and we're not using the talents that we have to help. And we might just get kind of down about that, right? Like maybe we feel like we didn't handle this situation the best, or this event didn't go like we planned, right? Like Kaleb, that time we were at Exposure and the Chick-fil-A sandwiches did not get put in the bag. We were kind of like, oh no, like we're going to be late for everything tonight.
and I got pulled over.
Things, yeah,
Did you know
that's a
that?
whole nother. I did
not
not.
know that.
I got pulled
Yeah,
over
he
in the
got pulled
church
over in the
bus.
church van because the lights were not on.
Yeah, someone had turned the lights off on the bus, and I didn't know that.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
They're automatic lights,
And-
so they just turned them off.
Yeah. And so and we talked about church buses breaking down, right? That stuff can be very frustrating. It can be very, just a lot going on, right? And you're not even able to focus on what you plan to focus on for that particular weekend. We were planning to go to Exposure for a lesson to hear that night from somebody. I can't remember who it was because we didn't get to see it.
Yeah.
But we were instead driving back 30 minutes to Madison, Alabama to Chick-fil-A. And so that's the kind of stuff can get you down. The whole point of this trip was to kind of grow spiritually, but we're sitting here having to figure out this Chick-fil-A sandwich ordeal.
And our kids are starving.
And they're starving the whole time. So they're not even listening, even if they were at the lesson. So things like that just can kind of be like, you get in that day and you're just like, what in the world just happened today? Like, what is going on? Feel kind of down. But if you look at it big picture, I think if you think about times that you're down, what did we learn from this experience? How can we use this moving forward? You're looking at it from not just what's in the moment, and maybe it makes you feel less down if you look at it more big picture.
I think you need to talk. You need to confide in one another. Things are usually not as bad as we think they are. Left to ourselves, we can pick something apart and think it was the worst thing ever. But if we talk to one another, especially since we have such a big team here at Henderson that we can kind of talk things through, people are going to see things differently. Like, Kaleb, you may have thought an event was awful, and then Matt and I are like, man, that was awesome.
Well, it turned
We
out pretty
enjoyed
good.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really good. Or we may think it was awful, or a lesson we teach or something, like nobody cared about that. Nobody was listening. And you were like, no, they were. It wasn't as bad as we think it is. So you got to talk. You really got to talk and get that stuff out. If you sit on it and stew on it, it just gets worse and worse and worse. For youth ministers, I would encourage them to open up and talk to your deacons. Tell us what you need. Tell us what we can do. I mean, I will not step where I'm not asked. And I'm not going to do anything I'm not going to preemptively do anything. And therefore, I can't do anything about anything I don't know about. So if there's things we need to be doing, if there's things we're not doing, you got to tell us. And you got to understand, we are more than willing to do whatever. Just say the word. And for deacons, you just got to get in there and keep on keeping on. It's where faith comes in.
Yeah.
Faith is what gets you through the valley.
Yeah, and I think too, we talked about encouraging our youth group members. I think it's a good opportunity for those that are working with youth to support each other, right? Us supporting the youth minister encouraging us. That needs to be something that's done as well. Maybe isn't done enough of, me saying, "Hey, Caleb, this was a great thing," but because sometimes that can be awkward just to go up and like, "Hey, you did a great job." But people, I know just when I've done a lesson at church and Sweeney's text me, he's like, "Hey, I thought that was a good lesson." That makes me feel really good. Not that I need someone to tell me that's not about me, but it's just like, sometimes I don't feel like it went that well. Yeah. And then other people saying, "Hey, from my perspective, I thought that was a good lesson." That can just make you feel a lot better. So if you're down, sometimes just an encouraging word from somebody, maybe it's just among the deacons and youth ministers, can make you feel a lot better about how things went, right? If you think a youth event went terrible and we're like, "I thought that was like really good, the kids seem to react really well to this," then it's like, well, maybe I just didn't see everything, And so it helps you feel a little bit better about it. And you're a little bit more encouraged as a result of positive words that people are saying to you.
And sometimes we can help, clarify or, kind of bring some humor to the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys put in so much time and effort planning these things. And I think about spring retreat last year, where we played all those games.
Yeah.
Survivor edition.
That was so fun, good. Though.
I mean, at the end of the day, it wasn't near as bad as we thought it was. And, it brought a lightness to the weekend that now I remember that.
I will never forget.
It brought a lot of people together against one group. Like we were all mad, and we were just all coming together on. So in that way, it was a lot of camaraderie going on.
But we're there, and we're plugged in, and we're trying to help, and we're enjoying things, and it's helpful to bounce those things off each other.
I like to tag on to what you said, Matt. Sometimes you may think that your lesson is awful. How you did it or something, and you walk away feeling like, man, I really just gave a terrible lesson just then. Like you said, the reassurance to know that you did a good job. Sometimes your kids come up to you, and this has happened to me. I've walked off and go, man, I really butchered that one. And then they come up and it's like, Josh, that's exactly what I needed.
Right.
And that in that moment kind of hits you, and you realize that even in the worst, even if it looks bad to you, it looks great to them. And I think that's what the weird thing about youth ministry is sometimes. Sometimes we don't completely understand what kids are completely going through.
Sure.
And so sometimes if we're talking about something and it goes completely wrong, it hit right at home for those kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we can all agree, though, as we start to wind down, serving beyond that title means showing up where God has placed you. Using those talents that we've talked about for good, for the people that He's put around you, especially as deacons and youth ministers. We're able to connect to a different group. Y'all are able to connect to a different group. Finding the people that you click with. Doesn't matter if we're a deacon. Doesn't matter if you're a youth minister, a parent, a teen. You're called to serve. And that's what we're initially called to do.
And that's a commandment from Jesus, right? Jesus came not to serve, not to be served, but to serve.
Yes.
Let me get that right. Otherwise we get some problems there.
I don't want to butcher some biblical.
Right. But that's the standard. That's the heartbeat behind everything we do, is to reflect Jesus to people.
Yeah. Matty Ice.
Yeah.
Swing Dog. Thank you so much for being with us here today. Your examples, your hearts, and your honesty is exactly what the deacons called to be in the church. From both of y'all, I'll give y'all just a second. You can shout out, give her your last goodbyes. If there's anything you want to talk about.
They're not dying.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they're dying, but like
I am old.
But just saying something to our viewers. Give your shout outs.
One thing that I didn't mention that I was wanting to touch on too, a lot of times as deacons, we have the opportunity for our whole family to be involved. And I didn't mention that, but I think it's especially true, like if our spouses help out with things. I know Janet and Lauren have helped at different events. And I think that's big because a lot of times youth ministers at the point when they're serving maybe aren't married yet. So they don't have a wife or somebody to help with certain things. So having deacons that's a requirement as a deacon, you have to be married, have to have kids, all those kinds of things. Having them help you, that's a big help for me because I know with females, sometimes guys are like, I don't know if I want to really touch touch on that too much, as far as getting into conversation about that, but it might be perfectly natural for your wife to have that conversation. So having your spouse involved, I think, is a big part of helping the deacons with their ministry. It's a huge part. Even with Sasha going with Jared a lot, that just helps to have those people to help with the girls on the trip, right? So I think having a support system as far as your spouse and different people going, I think that's huge. That's the one thing I didn't touch on that I wanted to mention. But also, thank you for having me on the podcast. It's been really enjoyable, and getting to be here with Sweeney too. I don't get to see Sweeney every day, so I see him at Wednesdays. So good to have Sweeney next to me too.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I've enjoyed being here. Thanks for having me. If there's one thing that I can leave with is to just encourage everybody as you look at the youth group to understand that there are Christians down there. And a lot of times when we talk about the youth group, we talk about the church of tomorrow. But if they're Christians, they're the church of right now.
That's right.
Amen. And we need to use them. And I think all of y'all agree with me on this one, but you will be amazed at their ability and the things they can do and the things that they will ask and the things that they will say. And it is a fulfilling part of my life to work with these young people. The hard thing is to let them go.
Yeah,
it is.
There's so many that have come through, and we have them for a short amount of time. I started before kids. My kids grew up with the youth group like you did, Josh. Even as babies, they were going on youth group trips. They came through the youth group, and now they're both graduated out. And, how many kids can we invest in over that time? And how many people can we give our lives to and say, we care and we love you and we want the best for you?
Yeah. And so to your point too, I mean, that it really helps having someone like Sweeney, because let's be honest, our kids don't always listen to us the same way they listen to other people, right? I wish Riley would listen to me, whatever, but me being on a trip and me telling him something's going to hit different if Sweeney tells him something. So having that different, not your dad, they see your dad every day, but if they see Sweeney or Jared or Kaleb, it's just having that variety of people. That's the challenge with having a kid in the youth group and you're working with the youth is like, I want to give him his space. I want to let him do his thing. I also don't want to be like coming down on him all the time either. So having someone else there that's been through, Sweeney's been working with youth for 30 years, you said, right? So having someone that has that experience on how to deal with certain things, that's a huge help for sure.
And, it's awesome getting to watch you guys kind of go through these things and learn these things and, be part of what you're doing. And thank you for having me on. And it's great to sit here beside Matt. I've enjoyed having him along with our deacons. We got a great group right now, and it's exciting to be part of.
Yeah, we do. Well, y'all, this has been real. This has been fun. It's been real fun.
I thought you were gonna say it, but it ain't been real fun. I was waiting for it.
No, it's been real fun. Thank you for listening.
Cool.
If this episode has helped you, inspired you, or reminded you of someone, share it. Tag a deacon, tag a youth minister, or someone who's been serving behind the scenes. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reaching out.
You've been watching the 3rd episode of Real Talk Youth Ministry with Josh and Kaleb. Stay faithful, stay focused, and remember, real ministry happens when you serve with real love.
It's about to get real.
It's about to get real.
So,
bye.
See ya.